Welcome to the People with Parents podcast, where we talk about, laugh about, and figure out the role reversal and ever-changing relationship between adult children and their parents. And now please, welcome your host, stand-up comedian, author, keynote speaker, and daughter with a capital D, Leighann Lord.
There was a recent article in the New York Times. Nursing homes seize pretext to evict poor. That pretext was using any outburst or display of difficult behavior from patients to send them to the hospital for a psychiatric evaluation. And even if they were released soon after, nursing homes were refusing to take the patients back, leaving them stranded in hospitals or with family members ill-equipped to care for them. Apparently, it's easier to get put out of a nursing home than it is to get into one. A few years ago, my dad floated the idea of selling the house and he and my mom moving to an assisted living facility or a nursing home. When I picked my jaw up off the floor and stopped crying, I did some research. Despite my parents working hard all their lives and saving money, they didn't have that kind of money. These places are horrifically expensive, like the kind of expensive where you think you'd be getting an Ivy League college degree at the end of your stay. And that's the other thing. Give or take a semester, college is 4 years. You can plan for that. How long is a nursing home stay? And who has the means to weather that level of financial uncertainty? You can easily outlive the money. And then what? So the way I saw it, my parents were already living in assisted living, and I was the assistant. Welcome to the urban Shady Pines. My plan, if you could call it that, was to keep them at home for as long as I could, as long as they were safe. That was hard in the beginning. This is difficult to share, but in the ugly days of my mom's Alzheimer's, she was verbally abusive and physically combative. I never knew what would set her off, and once she got amped up, nothing would calm her down. She'd rant and rave and scream at me and my dad. Well, me. My dad always reached a point where he would just sit down on the couch, really still, and disappear. He was there and not there. I didn't know what to do except to gather up and hide all the sharp objects from their part of the house because when she really got going, she'd stomp around the house with whatever pointy thing she could find. It got so bad once I had to call the cops. And because I told the 911 operator that my mom had a letter opener, 4 armed police officers showed up to our house. Our living room wasn't big enough for all of them, but they squeezed in. They and their guns seemed so big. Me and my parents seemed so small. By the time they showed up, I had already taken the letter opener away from my mom, but I was terrified that I'd done the wrong thing, that I'd made a mistake by calling the police. There were too many men. Too many guns, too many emotions, and all I could think was, please don't hurt my mom. But here's the weird thing about where she was mentally. There was a part of her that still understood and practiced the social graces. I don't think she understood that these men were cops. She greeted them like they were guests. She spoke graciously to them and answered their questions. I was astonished, and mentally, in that moment, I slipped a little deeper into the twilight zone. Looking back, I would have traded 3 of the 4 cops for a doctor, a social worker, and a bartender. Hopefully, one of them would have been skilled at talking down an angry Alzheimer's patient, one would offer some concrete options on what to do going forward, and one would offer copious amounts of comfort. Southern comfort. During another episode of Meltdown at the urban Shady Pines, my mom's behavior was of such that I loaded my parents into the car and took us all to North Shore Hospital because I knew they had a geriatric department. Somebody was going to help us. They got her calmed down, examined, evaluated, and discharged the same day. But we didn't even make it to the parking lot. She started having another episode, and I marched us all right back into the hospital. The emergency room geriatric psychiatrist on duty pulled me aside and said that I had to be really careful here. If and when the time came to put my mom into a facility, they would look at her medical and hospital records. if she had too many psychic missions, that could hurt her chances of getting into a good place. I stared at him, flabbergasted. I felt like a parent sitting in the principal's office, being told what my troubled kid needed to do in order to get into a good school, perhaps an Ivy with an open-ended graduation date. He said, "There's nothing wrong with her physically, but if I admit her..." Just then, Rod Serling began whispering in my ear. He said, "Hey, I see you're around here a lot. Would you like to start looking at houses?" I said I'd take his card and get back to him, but maybe something in a ranch style. I took my mom home, along with an expedited appointment for her to see a regular geriatric psychiatrist, a geriatrician, and a geriatric pharmacologist. This team of women gave me a comprehensive view on what I really didn't want to know, but what I absolutely needed to hear. The next few weeks and months were spent getting my mom off of drugs she shouldn't have been on. Her primary care doctor had been prescribing medications piecemeal for the symptoms we described, and not holistically for someone with her disease. Reading that New York Times article brought all these memories back. The challenge of making the best decisions I could in the moment, and still not being sure. My mom doesn't exhibit these behaviors anymore. Instead of arguments and threats, there are hugs and I love yous. My plan is to still keep her at home, here at the urban Shady Pines, as long as she's safe. A nursing home is not the right place for her yet. Or maybe it's not the right place for me yet. But something tells me that ranch house in the Twilight Zone will be available whenever I'm ready.
Thanks for listening to People with Parents. Please share the podcast with your friends and family and leave a review on iTunes. People with Parents is lived, written, and produced by stand-up comedian, author, and keynote speaker Leighann Lord. Visit her at veryfunnylady.com. And remember, we make them parents. They make us people. Crazy people.